10 years ago, she told herself she would get serious about retirement once the kids were done with school. 5 years ago, she told herself she would start investing properly once things settled down a little. 2 years ago, she told herself she was probably fine. The house had value, the marriage was stable, the job was steady, and now she is sitting across from a financial advisor in her mid-50s, and for the first time, she is looking at the actual numbers. And the actual numbers are not what she imagined. This is the moment a lot of women in their 50s are having right now. Not a dramatic collapse, just a quiet, sober reckoning with how much time has already passed and what that time was worth. My name is Mila, and I am obsessed with the small moves and hidden nuances that build real wealth, especially for women. Today, we are covering the hidden financial trap that quietly closes around women in their 50s. I am going to show you the 6 bars that build it, and then show you exactly how to start opening it. Because here is what I want you to understand from the very beginning. Most women who end up financially exposed in midlife did not get there through recklessness. They got there through reasonable feeling decisions made one at a time over many years, through a life that looked so stable on the outside that there never seemed to be any urgency. And by the time the urgency arrived, the gap was already real. I call this trap the velvet cage. It is not poverty. It is not financial chaos. It is a life that looks completely settled. A house, a marriage or the memory of one, a career or a household managed for decades, children raised, responsibilities met, wrapped around a weak financial structure. And the reason your 50s are the decade where this becomes urgent is simple. The math stops being forgiving here. In your 30s, a pause has time to recover. In your 40s, intensity can still close a gap. But in your 50s, the window is genuinely narrow. Retirement is 10 to 15 years away at most. Your peak earning years are either right now or already behind you. And honestly, if any part of that feels familiar, stay with me, because what we are about to walk through may be one of the most important financial conversations you have had in a long time. And by the way, I built a free Velvet Cage financial exposure audit for this video. It walks you through exactly where your financial exposure is highest, with real numbers and real prompts. I will tell you how to get it at the end. But first, let us open the cage. So let us open the cage and look at the bars it is built from. Section 2. Bar 1. Stability without true ownership. Okay, so here is something that happens to a lot of women as they approach their 50s. Something that does not announce itself as a financial decision, but absolutely is one. The drive of her 30s, the building, the hustling, the figuring everything out, starts to soften into something more like settling in. She has the house, the marriage is established, the career is steady. And somewhere in that settling, a shift happens that nobody names out loud. She stops asking what she's building toward and starts assuming the structure she is inside is solid enough to carry her forward. The urgency fades because things feel stable enough that urgency seems unnecessary. And stable enough can be one of the most expensive places a woman in her 50s lives. Let me introduce you to someone we are going to follow through this entire video. Her name is Diane. She is 53 years old. She has been married to Robert for 24 years. Together, they earn $215,000 a year. They own a 4-bedroom home in a good suburb, 2 cars in the driveway, a real vacation every summer. The kids went to decent schools. From the outside, her life looks like it worked. And honestly, from the inside, it feels like it worked too. Robert has always handled the investment. Not because Diane is not capable, she runs the entire household, coordinates her mother's medical appointments, and holds down an $85,000 a year job simultaneously. Early in the marriage, Robert was the one who was interested in the financial side, and the division of labor stuck. She handled the household, he handled the money. It felt like partnership. It felt like knowing your person well enough to trust them with the parts they are better at. And that is the thing about financial dependence inside a long, stable marriage. It does not feel like dependence. It feels like trust. The two things are almost impossible to distinguish from the inside, right up until the moment something changes, and suddenly they are not the same thing at all. What Diane does not know is that the retirement account Robert manages has $340,000 in it. That sounds like a real number, until you understand that a couple hoping to retire at 65 on $80,000 a year needs somewhere between $1.5 million and $2 million, depending on how conservatively they draw it down. They are less than a quarter of the way there at 53. Robert knows this. He has not said it clearly, because he keeps telling himself they will catch up. Diane has not asked, because she has not looked at the actual statement in over 3 years. It felt unnecessary. Things felt fine. That is what stability without true ownership looks like. A life that feels shared and secure, while too much of the financial structure is still not fully visible, understood, or controlled by her. A UBS study found that most married women still defer to their husbands on long-term financial decisions. And the women most likely to defer were not the ones in troubled marriages. They were the ones in the longest, most stable feeling ones. And that is only the first bar, because the next one is the one most women feel the most personally. And it is the hardest one to name as a financial problem, because it does not feel like one at all. Section 3, Bar 2, Caring for everyone before securing yourself now. This is the one I need you to really sit with, because this bar does not feel like a financial problem. It feels like being a good woman. And that is exactly what makes it so expensive. Around 49, Diane's mother started having health issues. Nothing immediately catastrophic, some mobility problems, and a couple of falls that scared everyone, but enough that Diane started driving over 3 times a week, handling appointments, sorting medications, and making the calls her mother could no longer reliably make herself. And because her mother's fixed income was not stretching the way it used to, Diane started quietly filling the gap. Around $700 a month. She did not make a big announcement about it. She just handled it. Because she is the one who handles things. And here is what happens psychologically to a woman who has been the one who handles things for long enough. It stops being something she does and starts being something she is. A woman whose deepest sense of herself is built around showing up for everyone around her has a genuinely hard time making her own retirement account the priority. It does not feel like a financial decision. It feels like a character question. Choosing herself feels selfish in a way that covering her mother's bills simply does not. So when her youngest was heading to college, and the family decided to help with tuition rather than have him take on serious debt, Diane paused her individual IRA contributions to free up cash flow. She had been putting in $400 a month. She told herself it was temporary. That was 4 years ago. And in those 4 years, there was always something that felt more urgent than restarting. Her mother's needs escalated. Her son's final year had unexpected costs. There was always a reason. The Federal Reserve's 2022 report on household financial well-being found that women are significantly more likely than men to reduce or stop retirement contributions during caregiving periods. Diane's 4-year pause cost her more than the $19,200 she did not contribute. At 7% annual returns, that money would have grown to approximately $32,000 by 65. But the deeper cost is what the pause did to the habit. Once it broke, the contribution started feeling like something that belonged to a future version of herself, rather than something urgent today. And here is what I need you to understand about that pause. It is not just emotional. It gets more expensive every year it continues. And that math, I want to show it to you directly, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Section 4, Bar 3, Delayed Investing and Interrupted Compounding. I want to show you a number, not to scare you, because I think seeing it clearly right now is the most genuinely useful thing I can do. A woman who invests $500 a month, starting at 25, at a 7% average annual return, will have approximately $1.3 million by age 65. A woman who waits until 35 and invests the exact same $500 a month at the exact same return will have approximately $610,000. Same monthly contribution, same market. 10 years of delay, much smaller outcome. And the reason the gap is that large is not the money she missed contributing. It is the compounding she lost, the growth on the growth on the growth that never happened, because the money was not there early enough to start working on itself. That clock does not pause for caregiving years, or career interruptions, or the seasons when everything else felt more urgent. It just keeps running, and the cost of stopping is not linear, it is exponential. So let us break down Diane's financial reality. Diane is 53. Her personal investable assets, money in her own name that she fully owns, understands, and controls, total $62,000. 12 years of inconsistent contributions, a few pauses, a few restarts, and a confidence gap she has carried quietly for most of her adult financial life. And that confidence gap is real and documented. Fidelity published research in 2023 showing that women are significantly less likely than men to describe themselves as investors, even when they are actively contributing to a retirement account. They use the word saving, not investing. And that distinction matters more than it sounds. A woman who thinks of herself as saving treats the account as a holding place. A woman who thinks of herself as investing optimizes it, grows it, and protects it with an entirely different level of engagement. Same money, completely different relationship to what it is doing. And that, by the way, is one of the reasons this channel exists, to build financially confident women. That psychological distance between saving and investing has quietly cost Diane more than any single financial decision she ever made. And that same mindset, the one that equates comfortable with secure, that equates fine with stable, does not just show up in how she invests. It shows up in how the whole household spends, in a way that looks completely reasonable from the outside. Section 5, Bar 4, a lifestyle that looks normal but leaves no margin. This one I want to say carefully, because it is genuinely not about judgment. It is about a pattern so ordinary and invisible that most people living inside it have no idea it is happening until someone makes them add up the numbers out loud. Diane and Robert take home approximately $12,800 a month after taxes on their $215,000 combined income. Their monthly obligations are not flashy. The mortgage, including taxes and insurance, is $3,400, reasonable for their suburb. 2 car payments totaling $1,050. Practical cars, nothing that turns heads. And health insurance premiums at $780. Their son's partial tuition contribution of $900 a month for 2 more years. Diane's mother's monthly supplement of $700. And then there is the layer of spending that built up gradually: the housekeeper every 2 weeks, the gym memberships, the streaming subscriptions, the Amazon habit that does not feel like a habit because each individual purchase is so small, the work lunches, the birthday dinners. Call that layer conservatively $900 a month. That is $7,730 a month before a single grocery run, before gas, before anything spontaneous, seasonal, or unexpected. After everything clears, Diane and Robert are saving somewhere between $900 and $1,000. I'm $200 a month in a good month, roughly 8 to 10% of gross on a $215,000 income. A household at their age and savings gap needs to be redirecting closer to 20 to 25% just to approach an adequate retirement. So currently, they are saving less than half of where the math requires. And yet nothing about their life feels excessive. That is why this is so hard to see from the inside. Because by around 50, something shifted. The spending that used to feel like ambition started feeling like maintenance. In their 30s, the better car and the nicer neighborhood felt like evidence the work was paying off. By their early 50s, the exact same spending was no longer about moving forward. It was about holding the line, protecting the standard of living that felt like the reward for everything they sacrificed to build it. And please hear me on this. Maintaining a life that costs too much is just as financially destructive as building one that costs too much. It just feels responsible from the inside instead of reckless. That feeling is exactly what keeps people stuck. The problem with a structure like this is that it can feel stable for years, until life asks more of it than it can handle. And in your 50s, that happens more often than anyone plans for. In fact, the next bar is where everything we have covered stops being slow and starts becoming urgent. Section 6, Bar 5. Midlife shocks hit thinner. Structures harder. Now, this is where everything I've described stops being a slow-building problem and becomes an urgent one. Because midlife does not stay calm, it almost never does. And the women I have worked with who were most blindsided were not blindsided because extraordinary things happened to them. They were blindsided because completely ordinary things happened and landed on a structure that had very little cushion left to absorb them. 8 months ago, Robert was let go from his firm in a restructuring. He was 56. His $130,000 salary, more than half their household income, disappeared in a single Thursday afternoon meeting. He has been searching since, but at 56, with a senior title and a compensation expectation to match, the market moves slower than it did when he was 42. In 8 months, Diane and Robert have burned through $41,000 of their $47,000 emergency fund. Their fixed obligations did not pause while Robert searched. The mortgage did not pause. The car payments did not pause. Her mother's monthly supplement did not pause. The structure that ran tightly but functionally on 2 incomes became immediately fragile on 1. The Urban Institute published research showing that job loss after 50 results in an average of 43% lower earnings in the next position compared to pre-layoff wages. Reemployment often comes eventually, but income almost never fully returns. And a job loss is only one of the shocks midlife delivers. There is the health event that arrives before Medicare eligibility at 65. There is the aging parent whose care needs escalate past what a monthly supplement can cover. There is the adult child who needs a financial bridge, and for some, the marriage that ends. And that one deserves its own conversation. All of these land far harder on a structure that was already running without margin before any of them arrived. Diane is sitting right now on $6,000 in emergency savings. A retirement picture that was behind before any of this started. A husband who has been out of work for 8 months, and a fixed obligation stack built for a $215,000 income, currently running on $85,000. And for some women, the next bar changes everything. Because this 6th bar is different from everything before it. The first 5 bars were things that happened around her, to her, gradually and without announcement. This one often involves a decision, and what it costs is tied directly to everything we have covered so far. Section 7, Bar 6, When Shared Stability Breaks. Here is something most people do not know. Divorce rates in the United States are actually lower than they used to be, except after 50. Gray divorce, as researchers call it, has nearly doubled since the 1990s, and now accounts for nearly 40% of divorces in this country. That decision takes real courage. Leaving a long marriage at 53 is not small, and it is not impulsive. It is usually the product of years of private reckoning. And the women who make that choice deserve to make it from a position of financial clarity, not discover the financial reality for the first time in a lawyer's office. A study published in the Journals of Gerontology found that women's household income drops by an average of 45% following a gray divorce. Men's drops by around 21%. Same divorce. More than double the financial impact on her. She was less financially visible inside the marriage, had less in her own name, and walked into the negotiation with less knowledge about what she was entitled to ask for. Diane has a friend named Carol. Carol is 55, and she left her marriage 14 months ago after a long time of knowing she needed to. She was ready emotionally. She was not ready financially. Carol spent 16 years as the primary caregiver, while her husband David built a consulting business generating around $380,000 a year. The divorce took 11 months and cost $23,000 in legal fees. And by the time the house sale was finalized, her share of the equity was $118,000 instead of the $140,000 she had calculated. David's retirement accounts were significantly larger than she had realized. She had never looked at the statements. She walked away from a 22-year marriage with $278,000 total and no home. At 55, earning $52,000 a year. She does not regret leaving, but she wishes she had spent the 5 years before she left building her own financial foundation instead of starting from scratch on the other side of the decision. Now, this is not an argument for divorce. It is an argument for a financially confident woman. A woman who builds her own savings, her own investment accounts, and her own financial visibility inside a marriage is not planning for divorce. She is protecting herself from the financial consequences of any outcome: divorce, widowhood, a spouse's job loss, or the reality that she is statistically likely to outlive her husband and may have to manage everything on her own eventually, regardless of how the marriage ends. Section 8. What women often misunderstand about being fine. Now, before we get into what to do, I want to say 3 things quickly, because this is where most of the false security lives. Being employed is not the same as being financially secure. A salary covers a lifestyle. It does not automatically build a future. Diane has earned $85,000 a year for over a decade and has $62,000 in personal investable assets to show for it. Being married is not the same as being financially protected. A marriage is a relationship. It is not a financial plan. It can end through divorce, through death, through a health event that redirects everything you both built. Stability shared is not the same as security owned. And owning a home is not the same as having financial flexibility. Equity is illiquid. You cannot pay your obligations with it. You cannot retire on a paid-off house if there is nothing generating income underneath the retirement. The markers of stability are real. The foundations of security are a different thing entirely. And in your 50s, that difference stops being theoretical. So now, let us talk about how to start opening the cage. Section 9, How to Start Opening the Cage. What I'm going to give you is not a list of tips, it is 5 questions. A midlife financial exposure check that will tell you more about where you actually stand than any generic advice ever could. The first question is, what do I own? Not what the household owns, what is in your name, fully under your control, that you could access and manage independently if everything changed tomorrow. Your own retirement account, your own savings account, your own investment account. If the answer is a number that makes you uncomfortable, or worse, a number you genuinely do not know, that is your starting point, not shame, a starting point. The second question is, what do I actually know? Do you know what is in the household retirement accounts? And whose names they are in? Do you know what the household net worth actually is? Not approximately, actually. Do you know what you would be entitled to if the marriage ended for any reason? Financial visibility is not about distrust. It is about being an adult participant in your own financial life. If there are numbers in your household you have never looked at directly, this week is the week. The third question is, what can I actually sustain on my own? If your household income dropped by half tomorrow, through a job loss, a separation, a health event, what would your monthly reality look like? How long would your emergency fund last? Which obligations could you cover, and which ones could not survive on one income? A woman who can answer that question clearly is not pessimistic. She is prepared. The fourth question is, where is my margin? Pull up your last 3 months of bank statements and add up every fixed obligation, mortgage or rent, car payments, insurance premiums, any ongoing financial commitment you cannot exit with a single phone call. That sum is your floor. The minimum it costs you just to stay still. If that number exceeds 65% of your monthly take-home income, you do not have a discipline problem. You have a structural problem. And structural problems do not get solved by cutting lattes. They get solved by eliminating obligations. You already know which one has been on the list the longest. The fifth question is, what happens if life changes? Not if something goes catastrophically wrong. If something ordinary happens, a layoff, a health scare, a major relationship change. A parent who needs more care than you budgeted for. Does your current structure have enough slack to absorb one of those things without immediately becoming a crisis? If the honest answer is no, that is not a reason to panic. It is a reason to start building that slack deliberately before life builds the urgency for you. I put together a free Velvet Cage financial exposure audit that walks you through all 5 of these questions, with actual prompts, real numbers to fill in, and a clear picture of where your exposure is highest. It is in the description. I only ask for your email to send it, and I will never share your information. If you have been watching this video and feeling the recognition a lot of you are probably feeling right now, that worksheet is your next step. Now, here is what you need to actually start doing. 3 moves. Not 10, not a complete financial overhaul. 3 specific structural changes that will do more for your financial safety in the next 12 months than anything else you could try. Move 1. Open one account in your own name. Open an account in your own name this week if you do not have one. An IRA, a brokerage account, something that is yours and only yours. Fund it even modestly to start. The habit matters more than the amount in the beginning. If you are over 50, the IRS allows you to contribute $8,600 per year to an IRA instead of the standard $7,500. That catch-up provision exists specifically for this season of life. Use it. Move 2. Have the visibility conversation. Have the financial visibility conversation with your partner if you are married, not as an accusation. As a partnership conversation. A lot of women tell me they avoid this conversation because they are worried it will come across as distrust after decades of things working fine, but here is how to reframe it. You are not questioning his integrity. You are making sure that if anything ever happened to either of you, you could keep the household running without missing a beat. Sit down together and go through the actual accounts, the actual numbers, the actual allocation. Both people in a marriage should be able to manage the household finances independently if they ever needed to. If that is not currently true, it needs to become true. Move 3. Cut one anchor. Look honestly at the obligation stack, not to strip your life down to nothing, but to identify the one item doing the most damage to your margin. The car payment that could be replaced with something owned outright. The membership that costs more than it delivers. The commitment that made sense 3 years ago and does not make sense anymore. Because here's what one eliminated obligation can do when you redirect that money. $400 a month invested consistently from age 53 at a 7% return gives you approximately $90,000 by 65. Not from earning more, not from a dramatic life overhaul, from cutting one anchor and pointing that money somewhere it can actually grow. Section 10. The deeper payoff, from looking stable to being safe. I want to close with this because I think it is the thing that matters most. This video was never about making you feel bad about the life you built. The house is real. The marriage, or the years inside it, were real. The caregiving was real. The career was real. None of that was wrong. None of it was wasted. A velvet cage is still a life that was lived with intention and love and genuine effort. I want you to hear that. But I also want you to hear this. Comfort is not the same as security. Stability is not the same as freedom. And a life that looks fine from the outside can still be leaving you more exposed than you deserve to be. What real financial safety looks like in your 50s is not a perfect number in a retirement account. It is knowing what you have, what you can sustain, and what your options are if life decides to change the terms on you. The cage was built slowly. It was built quietly. It was built from things that felt reasonable and even loving at every single step. And it can be opened the same way, slowly, deliberately, one bar at a time. You have time, not unlimited time, but real time. And real time, used well, still matters. And always remember, luxury is easier when your money is organized. I will see you in the next one. I love you.